Hello, in this video, we're going to talk about our paper. If you must choose among your children, pick the right one. This is joint work with Brittany Fasy and David Millman. I'm Brad McCoy. I'm going to give the first half of the talk describing the problem and some background, and then Ben Holmgren will give the second half describing our contribution. And we are all at Montana State University. So our title maybe deserves an explanation, but that'll become clear once Ben gives his part of the talk. So this is a Morse theory talk. So legally, we're required to talk about the height function on the torus. So smooth Morse theory, we have a mapping from some smooth manifold to the reals. And one thing people are often interested in is counting and classifying the number of critical points. So in the torus example, we see 4 critical points here. And we can classify critical points in terms of their index. So we can think of the index as the number of directions that we can move downward from a critical point. So this critical point at the bottom is of index 0 because there's nowhere we can go in the downward direction. At the next critical point, we have one linearly independent direction we can move in the downward direction. So we call this a critical point of index 1. The next critical point is also of index 1, as seen here. And then finally at the top, we have a critical point of index 2, because there's 2 dimensions of downward direction here. So lots of interesting things one could say about smooth Morse theory. At each point that's not critical, we have an idea of which direction is downward. So we can think of that as we get a gradient vector field. So we have a gradient vector assigned to each regular point. Also of interest are the Morse inequalities. So the number of critical points of index I gives an upper bound on the ith Betti number. So here we have one critical point of index 2. So that tells us that the second Betti number of the torus is less than or equal to 1. So the number of critical, so in general, you want to minimize the number of critical points, and then you can get a tight bound on the homology. So we're going to work with discrete Morse theory. So we can think of a discrete Morse function in 3 flavors. Algebraically, we have these function from, so here we're going to talk about our topological space as a simplicial complex. These results hold for the more general CW complex, but we're going to stick with simplicial complexes here. So for each simplex, we assign our real number, and we satisfy these 2 inequalities. So generally speaking, a discrete Morse function states that we have a function from the simplices to the reals, such that as you increase in dimension, your function also increases with at most 1 exception. So here we see this vertex labeled 4. If we look at the edges that are incident to this vertex, we have one that is labeled 6, so that's okay. And then we have one labeled 3, so that has a lesser function value. So that would be our exception. So we can pair simplices with this exception, and that leads to our topological flavor. So we can pair the edge V1, V2 with the face V0, V1, V2, the vertex V1 with the edge V0, V1, and the vertex V2 with the edge V0, V2. So why is this called a topological flavor? Well, if you remove any of these pairs, you don't change the topology of our simplex here. So if we removed the edge V1, V2, and this face, we would just have a V shape that has the same topology as the triangle. Our third flavor is combinatorial, and we can think of a discrete Morse function as a matching on the Hasse diagram, the directed Hasse diagram. So paired simplices get an up arrow where all other edges are directed downward. So we see in this example, V1, V2 is paired with the face V0, V1, V2. So we get an up arrow there. And in the literature, it's often interesting and enlightening to switch back and forth between these flavors. So changing perspectives can give you some added insight. So that's pretty cool. And using the Hasse diagram, you can apply graph theory algorithms which is, there's lots of algorithms in graph theory, so that can often be useful as well. So 3 flavors to think about a discrete Morse function. So the problem we consider is we have a simplicial complex with function values already assigned on the vertices, and we would like to construct a discrete Morse function that minimizes the number of critical simplices and agrees with our data. So here's an example input. We have a simplicial complex with function values on the vertices. So King, Knudson, and Mramor give an algorithm to do just this. The title of their algorithm is extract. So it takes a simplicial complex and an injective function from the vertices to the reals and gives us a discrete Morse function that agrees with the values on the vertices. Their algorithm consists of 2 sub-algorithms, extract raw and extract cancel. So our work mainly focuses on extract raw that generates an initial discrete Morse function with potentially more than minimal critical values, and then extract cancel cancels these critical values. So this is a very cool algorithm, but for high dimensional simplices, this can be slow. So there's a recursive call on the lower link of each vertex here. So the link of a vertex is the closed star minus the open star. And the lower link is things in the link that have function value less than or equal to the function value of the vertex. So what this figure is trying to illustrate is that for every d-dimensional simplex, there's a vertex such that the lower link is a d-1 dimensional simplex. So if we consider the tetrahedra, there's this vertex labeled 3, and the lower link of this vertex is the entire triangle. So this recursive call can get expensive, again, especially for high dimensional data. So our contribution is, how do we make a local decision that eliminates the need for this lower call? And that's what Ben's going to tell you about. So Ben.
Great. Thanks, Brad. So now I'm going to provide a little bit of a deeper insight into extract raw and some of its important properties. And then I'm going to provide our main contribution in the paper, an algorithm that we call extract right child, which should sound a little familiar from the title. So first off, extract raw's runtime. Extract raw is lower bounded by n squared log n. We know this because it's at least as hard as computing the homology of kind of these recursive smaller subcomplexes that keep getting fit into it. And we know that computing the homology of something has the same lower bound as matrix multiplication, which is omega of n squared log n. Furthermore, extract raw has a few other really important properties. So first of all, it is consistent with the data, the function values on all the vertices. If we kind of carry for every simplex, kind of carry with it the function value of its largest valued component vertex, we produce a gradient vector field consistent with that reflects that. And then also importantly, if we actually look at this on the Hasse diagram, we have every single matching as an output of extract raw is according to these lexicographical orderings on the Hasse diagram between sort of the smallest valued parent nodes and then their largest valued lexicographically valued child nodes. So maybe to help visualize this, if our simplicial complex is just this little cycle here, and here's its corresponding Hasse diagram, every single match that extract raw is going to produce is going to be between sort of the smallest possible lexicographically valued parent node and then its largest lexicographically valued child node. So if we were thinking of this as being ordered from left to right, our smallest leftmost parent is always going to be paired with its largest rightmost possible child. And every single arrow in this gradient vector field is going to have actually this property. So knowing this, we can just go in and design an algorithm that exploits this property instead of using all of these expensive lower link calls. So the first thing we can do then is do something that we call Hasse decoration, which is just going in and storing kind of the function value of the largest component vertex for every simplex. So that function value that's always going to be kind of carried up with any higher degree simplex. And then any simplex's rightmost child and also its leftmost parent. And then we're just going to conduct matchings the exact way that they're done in extract raw. So the smallest leftmost lexicographically valued parent is going to be the head of an arrow in the gradient vector field, and its largest rightmost child is going to be the tail of an arrow. And then all of our leftovers are just going to be called critical. So for an example here, this is our simplicial complex on the left, this cat-shaped thing. And then on the right, we have our Hasse diagram. All of our matchings are going to occur sort of after we've enumerated all of this, every node with this important data. We're just going to go through from the highest dimension down and say, okay, what's the rightmost child of everything? So 3, 4, 6, what's its rightmost child? It's 4, 6. And then also, what's the leftmost parent of 4, 6? Well, it's 3, 4, 6. What's its smallest lexicographically valued thing based off of F naught? And so then we have a matching, and we know that 4, 6 is going to be the tail of an arrow in the gradient vector field, and 3, 4, 6 is going to be the head. And sort of equivalently, what's going on the simplicial complex? Well, we're just going to have an arrow from 4, 6 going into 3, 4, 6, into that 2 simplex there. And then moving along, 2, 5, 7, we're going to be matched there with 5, 7, and we're going to add an arrow on the simplicial complex here. Then we're going to go down a dimension. So 3, 4 is going to be paired with its rightmost child 4. 1, 5 is going to be paired with its rightmost child 5. And then we're going to hit 2, 5, which is sort of our first danger zone area. So 2, 5 is going to try to be paired with 5, its rightmost child, but we're going to check, is 2, 5 the leftmost parent of 5? It's not. It's not the smallest lexicographically valued parent of 5 in the Hasse diagram. So we have to call it critical. Then 1, 6 is going to be matched with 6, where 6 is a tail and 1, 6 is a head of an arrow. 3, 6 we have to call critical because it's not the leftmost parent of 6. 4, 6 has already been called a tail, so we can skip it. 2, 7 is going to be the head of an arrow, and it's going to be matched with 7. 4, 7 we have to call critical because it's not the leftmost parent of 7 here. And then 5, 7 is also going to be a tail. And then last but not least, once we get to the vertices, everything that kind of hasn't been claimed yet as a tail, we just call critical. So 1, 2, and 3 are all going to be called critical in this case. And then for an idea of the runtime, this Hasse declaration step occurs in big O of dn time using O of n space, where d is the dimension of the Hasse diagram and O is the total, and n is the total number of simplices in the Hasse diagram, every node. And then all of the matches are just going to occur in constant time operations since we've stored all of that data kind of initially. So it's going to run in big O of dn time with O n space. And you'll recall from before that this is going to be a nice time complexity improvement on extract raw, which we show is lower bounded by omega of n squared log n. So in conclusion, if we're given sort of this pre-existing point data on a simplicial complex, and we want some function also on that that's consistent with that data that's reflective also of its topology, we're not going to be able to get something exact necessarily. Computing a perfect gradient vector field is an NP hard problem, but there are ways to come close. And remember, we can do this sort of using a gradient vector field. This is an equivalent definition to a discrete Morse function, and it's also an equivalent thing to look at everything through the Hasse diagram. And so if we do look at things through the Hasse diagram, sort of these previous important algorithms have an underlying property that they're using based off of lexicographical orderings. And exploiting this property gives us some really nice time complexity improvements. So this is our main result. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed our contribution.